So welcome to the Leadership Exchange. Today I'm joined by Martin Barnes. Welcome, Martin. Glad you could join us.
Hi, Maggie.
Martin, just to introduce him, is the CEO of Senior Flexonics at LPE and also Senior Flexonics UPECA based in Malaysia. I've known Martin for some years now, more years than we probably admit to, Martin.
Yeah.
With a career in senior leadership roles stemming back to 2006, this is now the third business that Martin has been leading in the aerospace and industrial sector. And he's been in this role for the last 5 years. So I'm delighted that you're able to join us today at the Leadership Exchange and share some of your reflections from this particular time, Martin.
Yeah, thanks, Maggie. I'm delighted to be able to participate. So thank you for inviting me.
You're really welcome. So let's start by looking back and thinking about these months that we've been through and continue to go through. And what do you feel has been that you've realised as a senior leader through this time, or if you like, reclaimed through this time, if the gifts perhaps would be a better way of putting it, from these months?
Yeah, I guess I think one thing I've definitely reclaimed in the last 6 months is a lot more time than perhaps I used to have in my diary, because running businesses in the UK and Malaysia and time zones and bits and pieces like that, by this time in the year I probably would have been travelling for at least 7 or 8 weeks of this year already, and because of the lockdown measures that came in March and the fact that I'm not allowed to go into Malaysia at the moment, I actually haven't been out there since January. So probably at least 6 or 7 meetings out or weeks out in Malaysia I haven't been able to do. So I've regained a lot of time, and although it's been a busy period, I guess that getting that time back has allowed me to create more time for planning and a reflection on progress on initiatives that we started off at the beginning of the year. And there's been an awful lot of stuff that's gone under the bridges in the last 6 months that when I reflect back on where we started the year back in the early part of January, February, we never imagined in any way whatsoever that we'd be at this point in time and that we'd have done the things we've done this year. So there's been a lot of opportunity to reflect back on that and work out which bits have been done well and which bits haven't been done that well. And I think the things that I've sort of realised out of this whole process, I guess, in doing that reflection is probably some more focused, more efficient ways of doing things and achieving the same outputs that we possibly used to achieve last year and the year before in a much more complicated way. So there's been ways that we've kept things a lot more simpler. This is a typical example of utilising the raft of technology that seems to emerge in the last 6 months. I guess a lot of us have done Zoom meetings with friends and online quizzes and everything else like that. And I think using that technology now in the workspace has been a sort of major revelation, I think, for me and also for our senior team. And certainly in our relationship with some of our customers, it's become a common tool now that we're using all the time. So that's really sort of I've reclaimed a lot of time, which has been used well for reflection, and I've realised that there's simpler ways of working that probably could have been using all the way along that makes everyone's life a lot easier.
Yeah, it's interesting, isn't it? Because I mean, you lead a dispersed team across 2 geographies, the UK and Malaysia. And,
yeah.
Leading dispersed teams isn't new. And working from home actually isn't new. But what's different is that we're all doing that most of the time now.
Yeah.
But as you say, it's the efficiencies that can come from it.
Yeah, I don't think we were very good at it before. I mean, we probably used to pick up the phone but we would never probably thought of having a video call, and we would have never probably thought of Teams meetings or sharing information, collaborating as the way we've done it now. And I've worked from home in the past in previous roles, and it's almost been an isolationary thing working from home, whereas now actually working from home is a completely different concept than it was before. And I think as a leader, you have to sort of understand that when you've got people, colleagues working from home or members or employees working from home, they can be as productive as they were in the office, given the right tools and the right environment and the right level of empowerment from a management perspective. I think so. It's too easy to probably think people are at home not working, but actually, they're working as efficiently. And I remember myself when I used to work from home regularly for 5 years. I worked one day a week from home. And I think I was more efficient on that day than I probably could be for the other 4. So, but I think it's just the way we engage now is completely different than it was. And it's not new for me running a dispersed team, as you say, but what is new for me is the efficiency in which we're probably doing that now, and the level of common language we've now developed between us in order to do that as well. So it's no longer an unusual thing to do. It's more of a part of the new normal, I suppose.
And we're all still continuing to learn. I know I am, for sure.
Yeah, there's always something with technology. So when you think you got it nailed, there's always something that will come along and trip you up. But generally, I mean, the developments have been in that sector.
Yeah,
the last 6 months have been amazing, really.
So in terms of the costs, though, because there's been the gifts,
yeah,
the costs. I mean, we've lost things, or things are perhaps out of awareness or don't seem available. And I know there's lots of reference to when we return to normal, but my part, I don't think that's a reality. So holding out for reclaiming things that have been temporarily lost and thinking they're going to come back, I'm not so sure. So what's your perspective on that what's been lost or is out of awareness for us in this new way of working and leading?
I think one thing that we realised fairly recently, I suppose, is it has been too easy to focus solely on COVID. I think that's and the continual contingency planning, and you lose sight of the bigger picture. You lose sight of maybe the 5-year plan and what you were intending to do in the first place. So recently we sort of taken the conscious decision to, although we're still focusing on the safety and well-being of the people who work for us, we decided to sort of push COVID into the background a little bit more and get back to those normal conversations around, okay, well, we've got a 5-year plan for the business. Nothing's really changed in terms of the growth profile we wanted. It's probably shifted in time because we don't know how long this bottoming out period is going to last for, but it hasn't fundamentally changed what we wanted to do in building a sustainable, profitable business. So really, it's bringing us back into the here and now and saying, well, if this is going to be the new normal for a period of time, and I think you're right, it could be for the next 2 years, we could be operating in similar conditions. Then we shouldn't lose sight of the things that we still need to be doing over that period, and particularly around business planning and keeping an eye on strategy, because and within that you have to recognise that the risk landscape is probably completely different than it was 6 months ago, and the demand landscape is completely different. But it doesn't actually stop you from doing those things that you should be doing. So that's been a sort of big realisation for us recently: is don't lose sight of the overall objective of what you're trying to achieve. And the other thing I think, which is coming up in the news more, is there's been a massive global impact because of COVID, but we don't know what the next big global impact is going to be, and we've got Brexit coming around the corner. And probably if we were having this conversation this time last year, it would all been on Brexit, and now it's all on COVID. And so we've just gone back to that and say, okay, let's not lose sight of the fact that we've got other things that are coming along that are going to be in that view. So the last 2 years has always been business continuity planning around Brexit. The last 6 months has all been doing business continuity planning around COVID. So it's now about, I guess, having those balanced conversations around business in general, rather than them all being solely focused on one theme or another. Final thing probably for me is I think a lot of things that's missing from conversations at the moment has probably been optimism as well. I don't think people are generally as optimistic as they were 6 months ago, either about their personal circumstances, the job security, what's happening in the businesses, what's happening in their private lives, optimism about their children getting decent jobs. So I think that's fallen away now. So I think that's lost. I think that theme is lost from current conversation, really, that sense of optimism. So again, it's part of employee engagement. It's about trying to get that back into conversations again.
Yeah, it's a lovely point in terms of what we do in organisations actually to bring back that optimism.
It's difficult because people are concerned. People are concerned about their job security. So, and if you spend too long following news feeds, they are overly pessimistic at the moment. I think from what we see, there are opportunities out there, but those opportunities are going to be harder to win perhaps than they were before. So businesses need to be setting themselves up to be able to be more competitive and secure those. But I think, you know, I think you've got to be your glass has to be half full.
Yeah. Yes, it does. And you know, there's been great examples, you know, and you're amongst them, of, you know, leading through the heart of the crisis with great calm, and then optimism needs to follow.
Yeah.
But based on reality, and a lot of reinvention in terms of many businesses. A lot of reinvention.
Oh yeah, undoubtedly.
Yeah. So looking to the future, on that note, and thinking about optimism, what do you think is absolutely imperative that organizations preserve from this time? For example, I mean, I've seen a lot of closeness in relationships between line leaders and their employees. Closeness and intimacy, if you like, in conversation that was never there before, because people have needed to, for example, declare things about their family circumstances or their health circumstances that weren't visible, weren't declared before, not because they were hidden, but because it just wasn't relevant. But people have brought that information in, and it's deep understanding and relationships in organizations between line leaders and their teams. From your perspective, what do we need to be preserving as organizations going forward?
Well, I think you touched on that. The whole employee proposition is something that, with the amount of communication that we've done over the last 6 months, and the effort we've had with our employees, keeping that value proposition for the employees live is a key thing. And I think the employee engagement, and it came out of our last survey to some extent, that employees, I guess, demand more from leadership in terms of that engagement factor. So certainly in terms of preserving what we've learned about employee engagement, what we learned about communicating effectively with people, using all the channels available, you know, the Works Council. Unfortunately, with the restrictions, we haven't been able to do as many sort of town hall meetings as we've done in the past. So it would be too easy to use that as an excuse not to communicate in the same way as we did before. So, but what we tried to do is look at alternate channels for that. And we were chatting earlier before we started recording that, I've just recently finished recording another Teams video briefing, which goes on a Teams channel that the employees can access, and goes on our intranet. And I'd sort of termed them bite-sized briefings, because we don't do the same sort of 1 hour marathon sessions, dog and pony shows that we used to do. But these are very much short, punchy, bite-sized briefing sessions, just to keep people connected to what we're doing as a business. Helps me sort of send out the key messages around, whether it's around COVID or whether it's around business development type stuff. But also the next one I think we're going to do is we're going to do more of a Q&A session. So we're going to ask for employees to submit questions in advance, and then I think our HR business partner, Nikki's going to interview me, and we'll answer some of the employees' questions directly. So things that they would have been able to do in Teams meetings. So I think the employee proposition side of it is definitely something that we have recognised that, it has been prompted and accelerated by this period, and, we want to preserve that going forward. So I think the whole period is accelerated change across the organisation, change for good in some respects, and whether that's organisational, whether it's policy, whether it's structural, whether it's the way we engage with people, how we invest in the workspace. Lots of learnings from that change journey over the last 6 months. And probably like many businesses, we've had to go through a restructuring, and we did that I believe in a very good way. Lots of empathy, lots of engagement with the employees. And we probably learned things from that activity that we want to just keep and preserve going forward. So that was also a sort of big strand about what we did, and the people piece was massive in that, as you can imagine. And then there's all the practical things like making sure our business continuity plans are effective. So, sometimes in the past we all did it, but how effective was our planning, and did we really consciously understand all the risks? And when this all started, we didn't have pandemic in our business continuity plan. So we do now, but we didn't then. So that's one of those things. And then just being more resilient, I guess, learning to be resilient as an organisation, creating flexibility, dealing with the unexpected, being agile, responsive, all the things that our customers want, but also all the things that invariably our employees want as well. So yeah, massive amount of stuff.
Yeah.
Too much to mention.
Many organisations risk register is going to look quite different going forward with the different elements.
Yeah, we had to redo ours in July as part of the group risk planning, and the whole thing was sort of turned on its head from what it would have looked like last July by comparison in terms of the magnitude of the risk and where it's at, and as I say, in our business continuity plan and and our risk planning at the time, pandemic and workforce disruption due to pandemic was like that was never going to happen. But little did we know.
Just turning it on its head and looking at the virus itself, and thinking about its purpose. And I know that there, has been enormous loss of life, huge devastation for many people, many families, many businesses. And if it had a cause, if it was the antidote, if the virus itself was the antidote, what is it seeking to cure, do you believe, in business?
It's a very good question. That I think one of the things that springs to mind probably is complacency. I think as leaders in businesses, it's especially if you've been in business a long time, and or you've been with one business for a long time in the same role, you can get into a way of working which is almost a drumbeat. You go through the cycles every year, and you go through the process, and you often have to find those moments in time when you sort of check yourself and re-energize yourself for the next phase, whether that's on an annual basis or a 6-monthly basis. And I think we can all be guilty of being complacent at times. So it's too easy when everything's going well just to rest on your laurels and just say, okay, easy street, no need to change anything. It's all, we got sequential growth, everything else like that. And it's only when we often do our best work when we're under the cosh, whether that's to do with either operational, financially, or personally. I think we probably sometimes in that pressure moment do our best work, and I think the COVID pandemic has applied that pressure on every front, whether it's personal, financial, operational, business. And I think it's certainly within our organisation, with me, it's sort of rejuvenated that drive to continually improve the business and to make sure we're not being complacent, because that's definitely now is not the time to be complacent. I think the realistic sort of view is there might be fewer competitors in our space post-COVID, but the reality is those of us that remain, the competition will be fiercer. And so if we haven't got our businesses in the right shape to be successful in that period, then we're not going to succeed, and we're not going to grow, and we're not going to create security for our employees. So really, now is not the time to be complacent. And I think, I can look back on things in the last 5 years and think, well, actually, over that period when we were beating budget by £10 million a year, it was very easy just to sit back and let the orders come off the fax machine and be happy. But now it's a completely different space. So that's probably one area. And then the other one is, we've already touched on it, is really greater focus on the organisational capability and people within that, and the role of people. Many of us are operating businesses that are now in a completely different shape and with less people than we had 6 months ago. We're 20% less than we were. And we're in the past, we've probably accepted a degree of inefficiency that we've now probably eradicated from our businesses, and we've now made all those difficult decisions about size and shape and stuff like that. So really now focusing on making sure that organisation that we've created is capable of sustaining the next 12 months, 24 months, 36 months of uncertainty, being resilient within that, and then surviving and growing off the back of it. And within that, how we continually engage and communicate with our employees over that period is going to be vital, because we need them to stick with us and support the business and be as optimistic and as on the front foot and competitive as they can be, really.
I love your thought that the cure is for complacency. That's great. It's great. It's certainly given us all a call to order, let's call it.
Oh, definitely. Yeah.
To re-examine things both in our businesses but also personally. And that's great. And I know you and I have talked about that question about what am I tolerating in my business, what am I tolerating in my team, and bringing that into consciousness. And it's not to say that we shouldn't tolerate it, but we should at least be conscious about it and the choices that we're making, as opposed to just not getting around to it, or it feels too difficult, or actually it's quite successful over here, so why change?
Yeah. We you know, if everything's going well, you shy away from those decisions which are around continual improvement. And if you can try and do something better tomorrow than you did it today, and if you try and take that thought with you every day and come up with a plan of action almost on a daily basis, then you can keep moving forward. But if you don't do that and you just get absorbed into the normal business rhythm, then sometimes it is just too easy to be a little bit complacent. And as I say, now it's not the time for that now, because it's going to be a tough environment out there, and there's no place for complacency now. It's really about improvement.
For sure. So talking of improvement, how has this time forever changed your leadership? What are you going to preserve, take forward for the future?
A couple of things, I suppose. Certainly working more efficiently. I think I am still very keen to go and travel out to Malaysia and meet my team over there, and having and have that direct engagement with them, and continue to build those relationships. We changed the whole management team in March over there, and my new general manager started his job in lockdown, and he wasn't even allowed to go into the premises. And so and I've just done his sort of end of probation review this week, and we had a long chat about the journey he's been on in the last 6 months, from coming out of a possibly even a more secure role into this role, having to restructure the business twice in the last 6 months, go out and try and find new business. So a massive amount of stuff that he's had to deal with, and through all that, we've been trying to work remotely and as efficiently as we can. So I think there is so working efficiently is something that we'll try and do, and we've even done it on in some of the customer meetings on the shop floor. Instead of them having to come and inspect a part in person, we've been able to use Teams as a medium to resolve quality control issues on the shop floor and stuff like that. So I think using that technology to be more effective in terms of the way we work, but also to communicate more efficiently, is going to be something that we will definitely keep going with, and that I'm more conscious of as a leader now, and need to communicate better and more efficiently, and also be able to span those different environments. So that's one area. As more emphasis on employee engagement, focusing really on the value proposition for our employees. They are critical to our success going forward, and it's too easy to overlook that. How we communicate, how we deal with their learning and development, involving, how I involve them in decisions that impact them as a leader, so working with the Works Council. So a lot of what, that I think my leadership is probably going to be a little bit more people focused than it probably was before. I mean, I like to think I've always been reasonable at that, but I think the emphasis over the last 6 months has probably said that, there's opportunity to do more, and as a leader, that's something I'm looking for. And also then within that, making sure that leadership is visible, spending time, the time I've reclaimed by not traveling to Malaysia, spending that time on the shop floor, spending that time talking to people, finding out what's making them tick. I think it always comes up in the staff surveys that leadership is not visible enough in organisations, and it is too easy for us not to take that time to be visible on the shop floor, and for people to know us and us to know them. I think probably the last thing for me is, it's probably, I think, for me to be a bit calmer sometimes as well. I think as a leader, be more accepting of the unexpected. Sometimes it's very easy to sort of suddenly get all worked up unnecessarily when things change. And I think one of the things we've had to realise, that things change on a daily basis, whether that's in response to a government announcement at 10 o'clock on a Sunday night that suddenly sets fire to all the employee WhatsApp groups and everything else like that. Or just dealing with things on a day-to-day basis when a member of your senior team has to self-isolate, and you've got to replan how you're going to deal with the next 10 days or 2 weeks worth of business without them being present and around. So a bit calmer, a bit more accepting that the unknowns are going to be out there, and you just got to deal with it when it happens, and be sensible about it.
Martin, thanks for joining us today and for sharing.
You're welcome.
Oh, it's been great to hear your insights, your your wisdom, your reflection, and what you're going to take forward in your leadership. That's what's really exciting to hear as well. So yeah, thank you for joining the Leadership Exchange. And if you would like to contribute to the Leadership Exchange, I put a note in the comments below, and I'll be in touch.